Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Uh, First, I'd like to say that it's really my pleasure to introduce to you, to all of you, probably know and heard, obviously, of Marsha Way, and Marsha's Way, because that's the way it is. Anyway, um, just a little bit of her background. Well, we know that Marsha is a professor here at the Faculty of Languages, professor, researcher. She holds a bachelor's degree from teaching English. I'm sorry, she bachelor's degree from the University of Lock Haven in Pennsylvania, right? And she's currently studying a master's in education, and with the specialization of virtual studies, or estudios virtuales from the University of Guanajuato. She is also, as you know, a freelance translator and interpreter, even though she doesn't like to be called interpreter, but also she's a sworn translator and a federal judiciary translator for and she has translated books such as Claus, The Legend of the Batman, Divine Torture, Puppet Theater, Staggering Social Inequity during the Porfiriato, called Puebla desde el aire. Well, with you, I'll leave Marsha Way. No, so sorry. Her talk today, obviously, is Marsha's Way, to discuss to discuss the color of assessment. If you can, it has to be Marsha. Marsha always comes up with some great ideas, and this is, I have to say, is one of her best ideas. This color-coded assessment for students' translation. All right. As a teacher, no, we all have our own ways of assessing, I'm sorry, qualities, the quality of the student's translation. Through rubrics, through tables, scales, even the old throw up in the air and and grade them according to where they land. Okay. Anyway, so students frequently look at their graded translations. No, they focus on the grade and, well, a little more. No, a little more. So teachers spend actually hours and hours grading, and well, with very little time in our hands, right? So the scenarios are, of course, assessing and assigning a grade to the translations is really a bad action, right? So in this talk, Marsha will be looking at the quality assessment in translation and see how color-coded assessment works to innovate students, or actually to involve students, in the correction process and give them, much better feedback, as well as to save time and energy for us as teachers. I'm looking forward to this, and I'm sure most of you will. So I leave you with Marsha Way.
How do I live up to that now? How do
Oh,
I
you
live
will.
up to that? You make it sound like I'm creating rainbows with unicorns and
You are, honey.
all of
You are.
this here. So thank you, Roberto. It's me again, everyone. This should be one of the last times that you see and hear from me during this, even though I'll be here in other capacities. But this is the deal. This is the deal. All of us who teach translation know how difficult it is to give students feedback. It may be because there's a lot of students, or the translation is very long, or simply because we think they don't pay attention to the comments or the corrections. So we say, why bother? We spend a lot of time doing it, and we feel sometimes that they don't spend a lot of time appreciating that. Those of you who are translation students, maybe you would like to have better feedback. You would like to know if your translation is really good or not. Okay. What I've seen and heard now, totally experience here, is that the teacher and students kind of talk about the translation in class. They throw up some ideas, not literally throw up, but throw them up in the air, put them out there. What do you think? What do you think? But it never really grounds on anything. They talk about options for vocabulary. Everyone hands in their translations. The teacher takes them home and gives them back with tens. Well, maybe not tens, maybe nines, maybe eights. But the deal is, the student has a number there that they really don't know what it means a lot of the time. And so some students might say, so you mean nothing's wrong? My translation is okay? Other students say, yeah, nothing's wrong. I'm perfect translator. Woo woo. I'm going to go out there and rule the world with my translations. And then what happens is they get out in real life and discover that their translations are maybe not as good as they thought they were. And it causes a lot of problems, even existential crisis sometimes. Maybe the student doesn't automatically get a 10, but they really don't understand what happened in the translation. If the teacher gives a lot of good feedback, it's excessive time and energy spent. We understand that we're teachers and we get paid to do this, but really giving extensive feedback on translation is time consuming. If the teacher gives little or no feedback, the student believes that he or she is ready to start translating professionally. So someone always loses in this equation. Teacher, students, it's not a winning situation. An assessment of students' translation has always been one of those sticky areas in the teaching learning process. Like many of you, I've been a translation teacher for many years now, and spending all those years trying to find the best way that I can to give the students the feedback that they need, but also not to spend my entire life doing it. Now, this talk that I'm going to give you today is more practical than theoretical, and I hope you really get something out of it. It may not be perfect, but I'm putting it out there so that you might take it, make some adjustments according to your case, and run with it and use it. Because student assessment and translation is crucial in order for them to really have an idea of what they're doing. So we're just going to touch on a few ideas about quality assessment itself, and then we're going to look at how color-coded assessment works. So we have some ideas. For example, Sager, Haddam, and Mason talk about assessing quality at a pragmatic level, not just a linguistic level. So we're not just looking at aspects having to do with language, accent, spelling, sentence structure, morphology, but rather we're looking at the pragmatics of it, we're looking at the use of it, the context of it, and we need to look a lot more about the meaning, the content that we have behind it. Stansfield in 92 talks about accuracy and expression. And accuracy is the degree of accuracy from which the translator transfers the content from the source language to the target language, from the source text to the target text. And accuracy has a lot to do with grammar and punctuation, but it also has much more to do with the message, actually getting the message across. This is what I found very interesting in Guillermo's talk this morning. It was very much sense for sense, as we say, not word for word, but sense for sense. We really want to give the idea, the feeling behind it, not just have words there that mean nothing. And we have the idea of expression, the quality of the translator's expression of this content in the target language. So accuracy, taking it from one language to another, and then expression, how well we express it in that language. Now, I'm going to share with you here. Give me just a second. I'm the one letting people into the room, and we've got a bunch of people waiting in the waiting room there. So we'll let them in quickly, and I'm going to share with you this quick presentation. It's just a few slides, but showing a little bit about this idea of holistic analytic and holistic assessment. Analytic assessment being looking at specific points as we assess students' translation work. And a holistic method, meaning that we look at the big picture. Here we have different levels the student is at, and we have a description of what's happening to the student at that level in terms of accuracy of transfer and quality of expression. So for example, if we look at level 5, we have complete transfer of source target or source text information, only minor revision needed to reach a professional standard. And in quality of expression, we have almost all the translation reads like a piece originally written in English. There may be minor lexical, grammatical, or spelling errors. So this would be one of the highest marks that the students would get, basically being ready to work in translation. And by the way, I'm also the one turning off microphones when people enter the room. And since I can't do that right now, I'm the one getting it. So if somebody's listening to me, maybe turn that off. Another one here that we have, the same idea, and this was an instrument that I had used previously. Before I actually put a lot of different color into it, what I would do is have them identify in red and green. Red for major errors, green for minor errors. And in that way, they could see what were the errors that were causing understanding problems, mistranslation, incomplete passage, addition or omission, word choice, etc. And the minor errors, which they're errors, but they don't affect meaning. So they could have that distinction between what was a major error and they really had to be careful with, and what were minor errors that didn't cause quite so many problems. I'm going to stop sharing this just for a second and turn off a couple microphones. Sorry, please be patient with me, because, okay. So we have these holistic type of models, and what I'm using, I call it analytic because it looks at very specific points. However, it doesn't give a grade for each of the points, but rather once you look at the individual points, then you can take a more holistic view of it and look at it in the big picture and see how well the student is working in their translation. So now that I did that, sorry about jumping back and forth here, but I'm going to share this one more time. And I'm going to show you an example of one of my marking cards. Now, the students, when they come into a class, they have to bring 3 things with them. They have to bring their translation printed. This is changing a little bit because of this whole virtual idea. I'm still going to get into that and see how that works. I haven't given translation since we've switched to this method. They would bring their printed translation. They would bring a set of colored pencils, and they would bring their marking card, which is the card that you see here. If they did not have one of those 3 things, there was no sense in them being there because they weren't going to be able to do anything with it. Like Roberto said, I'm Marsha, you know me, that's the way things work, okay? But just to get them have this idea that that's the way we have to do it. Now, this is specifically the marking card for children's literature. It's the same marking card for literary translation. And then there's another marking card for legal, administrative, medical. But in this case, really the only thing that's different is the color purple. Here, the color purple is more literary liberty, right? They're working very literally, word for word. And we want them to open up more and change things. We're going to see an example of that here in just a minute. We know that in administrative, economic, legal documents, we don't have literary liberty. We have to do things the way they are. And we have here the color pink, which is anything else. So if it's not sentence structure, vocabulary, punctuation, literary liberty, mistranslation, misspelling, or accents, formality, it's anything else. And anything else a lot of times includes addition and omission, false cognates, which may go into vocabulary depending on how we're working. So here we have an idea of the card that the students have, their pack of colored pencils, which would include at least these colors that you see here, and of course their translation. Now the translation they bring to me, they bring to class, is a nice clean translation. They probably just printed outside right before they came into class. And one of the things that I tell them as they're working is that's going to change. What I want to see at the end, I would love to see a nice white clean translation. But if you have errors, we want to see them. We want to be able to recognize what your errors are, and this should be a useful tool. So their translation, a lot of times, has colors all over it. We really do make rainbows out of this. And it has a lot of their comments and notes written on them. Because as soon as they finish their translation, they give it to me. I do a holistic assessment of it, give them the grade, depending on where we are in the course, depending on what level of course we're in, depending on many factors, is how strict or not strict we are with those kind of grades. Once I give them back to them, they take it and they make the corrections on their document so they don't forget what it is they had to do. Eventually, at the end of the semester, they hand in a portfolio with the original on one side, their corrected version on the other, but behind the corrected version is the rainbow, is the version they did with their corrections on it. Now, this way of marking, forgive me, hold on a second, there we go. This way of marking is, it completely went what I was going to say there, sorry about that. Oh, it's very student-centered, meaning that when I receive the translations with the colors on it, I really just have to do an overview, look at them and say, okay, I think we're good to go here. Put the grade on it and give it back to them. This way, the teacher's not the one spending hours marking the translations, but rather having students do it themselves. Now, some of you might look at this way of doing things and say, well, that's how I do them. And that's wonderful. That's perfect. That would be a great thing if you're already working in this way. And I see some of my students here in the comments are saying, yep, this is the method that we used for translation. Exactly. All right. So I'm going to share now another screen. And this screen has a sample text on it where we can see what would be the student's translation. Now, what I do as a teacher is bring my proposal for the translation and I put it up on in a Word document on the screen in front of the classroom, and then we discuss it. We go sentence by sentence, line by line. I tell them what I propose, and they come back to me with their questions and their ideas. The great thing about this is I learn so much from them about the ideas that they have. But here the teacher needs to anticipate what the student is going to do. They need to think. The students are probably going to want to use this word. The students are probably going to want to say it this way. And so they have to be ready with that and say, I know some of you probably have it this way, but no, it's not going to be it. Or some of you probably have it this way, and it's okay, but it's not the best one. This is a better option for it. And this really shows the teacher is ready to work with this, with the students. So what we're going to do very quickly is take this text and we're going to apply the color-coded assessment to it. And we're going to play around here just a little bit in Paint. We're going to look at the title of this. This text is a craft project, and it's a list of the materials that one needs to have in order to make this project. And so this text itself really goes into the idea of the Scopus theory. Each translation has a purpose. And our purpose in this text is for the reader to be able to take this list, go to a craft store, and buy the material that they need to buy in order to make this project. If they can't do that, then the translation has failed because it doesn't meet its purpose. It can't be done with it. Or if the reader has problems doing it, the translation has failed. So we really need to take into consideration that this is used for a very specific purpose, like every translation that we do, and that's the purpose that it needs to fulfill. So the first thing we have is cardenales en aros. And I would have read mine as a teacher and said, I chose the title Espera Navideña con Cardenales. And the students look at theirs and say, I have cardenales en aros. And I said, yes, I know you probably do, because you took it very literally. And so here we have an example of our more literary liberty. So we're going to take our purple, well, we're not, but our students are going to. We're going to take our purple here and no, it's not working. Oh yeah, here it is. In a shared screen, I can't quite get it done. Here we go. So we have, don't have purple. Okay, here we have purple. All right, so they can underline it, they can circle it, they can put it in a box, they can do however they want to mark it. Now, the interesting part is we don't just stay in color itself, but we actually have them write some of the other options, some of the other ideas they had. So as we said, we have an esfera navideña con cardenales. Much better idea. We have adorno navideño de cardenales. Fine, works good. Because we're being more descriptive, we're saying exactly what it is. This is a type of adaptation, and what we saw in the first presentation this morning. This really has to explain what's going on and what you're going to make. Cardenales and arrows really just doesn't give us any kind of idea of what the craft is about, whereas another title would. Now the next line, for Sylvia Monroy, we say, okay, no problem, everyone has the same thing, yeah, good, let's keep going there. And we go to the next one, bastidor de bordado de madera de 4 pulgadas. Now some of you have a different dialect and maybe this works. And even in Mexico sometimes, this works. But when you go into the craft store, you're gonna go in and you're gonna ask for aro de bordar. Un aro de bordar, okay? So we have here a vocabulary issue. This was probably not the best option, and our vocabulary is red. So we're gonna mark here our bastidor de bordado in red, and they'd probably write here to the side, aro de bordar, aro para bordar, de madera de 4 pulgadas. Oh, but wait, 4 pulgadas, what is that here in Mexico? Right? When we go to the craft store, we're not going to ask for things in inches unless they're things that already come in inches. A lot of times when we work with tools, we want to keep inches because they are named in inches, not in the metric system. But here we want our metric system. So which one is this? It's not sentence structure, it's not vocabulary punctuation, but rather it's anything else. In this case, we have the conversion, which wasn't done, and we're going to mark that one in pink. And they would probably make a note here as to how many centimeters that would be. All right. Our next one is cardenal artificial. I would have said un cardenal artificial, specifying a number as the original would have done. So we're going to mark the little arrow in pink and probably write un cardenal artificial. Okay? And again, we have our problem with conversion right here. Okay? We have another problem with conversion. Instead of una yarda, we could say aproximadamente un metro, or we would take the literal conversion and put it there. Remember, when we convert for these kind of projects, we're not converting very explicitly 3.5982 meters, but rather we're saying approximately 3.5 meters. Okay, so we would do the same thing here. De listón cuadriculado, rojo o verde. And cuadriculado could happen, could work in a craft store. The original said what would have been listón escocés. And you know the pattern for escocés and cuadriculado are different, at least here. And does it really matter which one they get? They're going to be looking for different patterns. So in this project, I don't think it really makes a difference if it's cuadriculado or escocés. I would have put on mine escocés. So this is something we bring up. You don't have to mark it with any color, but just remember that this is the difference that we have here. Okay. Rojo o verde de 3/8 de pulgadas a su elección. And what happens here is a su elección doesn't have to do with size, but it has to do with the color. Therefore, we have sentence structure, blue, a su elección should probably be, not probably, should be right here after rojo o verde. Un metro de listón cuadriculado rojo o verde a su elección. Okay. And then here we still have the conversion problem de aproximadamente 1 centímetro, and we're missing here de ancho. All right. The next one, 12 ramas de hojas perenne artificiales de 4 pulgadas. All kind of things wrong with it. Let's start with the conversion. After all the conversion that we have here, that would probably be the first place that we would start with. But here we have hojas de perenne. How many of you know what hojas de perenne are? I'm sure if you go to the craft store and you ask for hojas perenne, they're going to look at you like, exactly what are we looking for? And so this could be a vocabulary issue, but I think more than anything, it's a formality issue because this sounds more scientific, more like from a science class. And so instead of having this as a vocabulary issue, having it as a formality, which is black. And so we're going to mark this hojas perenne artificiales, ramas de hojas perenne, and simply it's going to be ramas de pino artificial, pino, instead of having the technical scientific name of it. Okay. Forgive me, these people have been waiting in the waiting room a while. Let me bring them in. All right, perfect. And we have 24 vallas con alambre rojo. Again, we see the issue of placement, sentence structure. And so the vallas, whoops, that shouldn't have happened there, should be blue. Yeah, sentence structure. Because the vallas are what are rojas, not the alambre. So 24 vallas rojas con alambre, y de hecho era con tallo de alambre. So what we're going to do is mark that with an omission. They didn't include that tallo de alambre. Okay. And the last one here, La Pintura Deco Art Dazzling Metallics Glorious Gold. We like to think that would stay the same because it's the name of paint. But if you go to the craft store, and this was one of the specifications that I had the students do when they did this translation, was go to the craft store and ask for these things. Think of how you would say it and go and ask. If they look at you like, huh, what? You know something's wrong with your translation. If they say, oh yeah, I have this, this, and this, and this, you know that you're doing the right thing. So we have here Deco Art Dazzling Metallics. That does stay the same. It's the brand name and the line. However, Glorious Gold is called Oro Viejo. And so what we have here basically is that they didn't translate this one. Now, this could be a mistranslation because they didn't translate it, or it could be anything else because they didn't translate something that they should have. I like to call it a mistranslation because, well, it should have been translated. So we're going to mark that with orange for a mistranslation. All right. This is a very short example. We're looking at this translation now that we've gone piece by piece and marked things according to their error. What do we see in this translation? We see that this person had problems with omission, and they had problems not knowing that they had to convert, right? You see all the pink there. We also see two examples of blue sentence structure. We had the modifier in a place where it probably should not have been, okay? We have one vocabulary issue, and we have a place where we need more literary liberty. The student looks at this and they say, Okay, I see the areas that I have to work on. The teacher also receives the translation and they look at it and they say, yeah, all right, this student had a lot of problems with the conversion. They just didn't realize they had to convert, right? But other than those conversion problems, not too bad. As we said, bastidors, not the best word, but still understandable. The literary liberty. And then you can judge how you're planning on grading this translation for your class. You can put the student's grade there. And the wonderful part is with this, you can line up students' translations and put the biggest rainbows to one side and the smallest rainbows to another, and really give the students grade based on this scale that they have. The ones who had the most problems, the ones who had the least amount of problems, and then those scales in between. All right. This was, I don't think we have time for another example because there's still a few things that I need to specify here. But this is the idea that we have the students interact actively with their translation. They're able to spend time, first of all, compare their translation to what the teacher has as a proposal, or we can have another classmate. We can have one of our students bring their proposal, and then we can have them take the class, or we have the teacher take the class. The thing is, when you work with this, you really have to, as we said, anticipate what the students are going to have on their translation. And so I can see that I think their students are going to choose this word. Why or why not? I think the students are going to use this. Why or why not? So when they say, teacher, I have this, you say, no, because of this, this is this. Or you say, yes, possibly, but okay. So the teacher really has to be ready, first of all, with the proposal, and secondly, anticipating what the students are going to say. Students can also participate in doing this method in class and helping their classmates do it. And the teacher really can sit back and just make sure that everything has been explored that needed to be explored. As I'd already mentioned, you can create a grading card that includes other elements. So you can make a grading card for legal translation, for marketing translation, for other types of translations, so that you have all of the aspects that you want them to look at. You do have to be careful that the session doesn't get too slow, because a lot of times you have a lot of material to cover in a class. So you don't want everyone raising their hand saying, teacher, I have this, teacher, I have this, teacher, I have this, but rather you say, this is the way it is, period. And somebody says, teacher, no, especially in legal translations, for example, no, right? Literary translations, these kind of translations, yes, it's a little more open. But we don't want everyone saying, teacher, I was looking and I think, what do you have? Okay. The students may do this. Now, this is interesting because this is a classroom method that I use, but a lot of texts already have a translation to them. I'm thinking right away of documents that you get in the airport that your tickets used to be in, that talks about what you can bring through customs and what you can't bring through customs. There's already a translation done. So take the English, translate it, and then compare it to the Spanish translation that they have there, and see how they compare and what kind of colors and how your translation would look with these colors. The idea is that you can look at this and you can see right away where the student is having issues and where it's not. Now, the goal of this is that students eventually have fewer and fewer and fewer mistakes each time, because they're working with it actively and able to understand what they should and shouldn't be doing. However, we do have to remember that each time we use this in a different area, new problems are going to come up again. So if I'm working with a craft project and I keep working with that topic, it may get better. But once I bring in an excerpt from a novel, new problems are going to come up. And once I bring in an ethnic novel as compared to a historic novel, new problems are going to come up. So it's not always about the students constantly getting better, because each time they change areas they're working in, new issues are going to come up for them. And it's okay. It's okay that they come up for a while. A recommendation that I have is that when you use this kind of method in the class, you keep the translation short. Because I've also seen teachers leaving 5 or 6 pages to be translated. They're going to be making the same mistakes in 5 or 6 pages that they're going to make in 2 paragraphs. And so let's focus our energy on a small amount instead of on a larger amount. Yes, as they advance, yes, as they get better, we can start making it longer. But in the meantime, we need to keep it short, simple, straight to the point, lots of elements that the students would have challenges with, and see what they do with it. And so this is Marsha, as you know, as many of you know, this is Marsha. And right now, I'd like to see if anybody has any questions, anything that I didn't, maybe describe well or talk about well. I'm looking here in the chat to see if many times it's also the other way around. We think teachers won't really bother checking. Exactly, completely our job as students. The students themselves have the idea that the teacher is not going to check the whole thing. And sometimes if you're short on time, the student just throws anything in there thinking, they're not going to read it anyway. And when we find out later that maybe they didn't read it, or maybe they did, okay? So yes, that's also another aspect we need to see. Microphones. I like your microphone comments there. Yes, please turn off microphones when you come in. Yeah. Well, not so obvious, huh? Okay. Thank you. Some of you are saying about how useful it was, because this is a method that I've been using. As I said before, I had used just red and green, red for major errors, green for minor errors. But then I started bringing in other colors and other aspects, because, sometimes an accent can be a major error because it changes the meaning. Sometimes an accent can be a minor error because, it really doesn't do anything to make a difference. Okay. Sometimes a letter can make a big difference. Sometimes the wrong letter just makes no difference at all. All right. Issues about choosing colors sometimes, or interpreting. Do we have issues, or I'm not sure this question.
Yes, you as a teacher, if you don't know every time what is the good color and
Right.
what is the effect in the students about knowing what they have to do.
Right, exactly. It's an issue that comes up, as we saw here. Sometimes, for example, you have something that could be a vocabulary issue, but it could be a formality issue, right? It could be vocabulary, it could be something else. It could be sentence structure, but it also could be mistranslation. And so really, I think the most important thing is that you discuss this in class, how it could be both of these issues. And I always have the students go for the worst one, the most serious one. So if it's a question between, sentence structure and mistranslation, mark that as mistranslation, because mistranslation is much more serious. And when they see mistranslation there, they kind of get moving better. So sometimes, yes, we have, as a teacher, as students, we don't quite know which one to mark it. The important thing is that you recognize that it's an error, that you have this discussion in class of what options it could be. And that's the big thing, especially the first couple classes. Students are like, what color should I mark this? What color should I mark this? What color should I mark this? And you're going, okay, what kind of, that's vocabulary. Vocabulary is what color? Red. Yeah, there we go. So the first couple classes are really that, having students be able to identify the type of errors, what colors they have to mark it. But even if you have to tell them every class what color to mark things, it still, I think, has a greater impact on students and teachers' work and understanding about what's happening. Okay.
Good.
All right, great. What else? Anything else? Oh, it's so exciting to see former students here going, yes. Purple. Someone asked about the color purple. Purple is more
yes, that's
literary
right.
liberty. Yeah.
Mhm.
More literary liberty. So you take something word for word instead of making it the sense itself. All right. And I think that's it. Can you share some of the translations that you use? Yes, I can put more information up on Facebook later about the method and giving examples of some of the translations that we use with it. All right. Can we use this too before starting the translation or just to check it? Of course, this is a good question. If when the students know that they're going to be checking the translation this way, hopefully when they're doing the translation, they also have these ideas in their mind. They're looking at a word and they're like, is this the right word? Is this the word I want? Is this the word that I need? Knowing that later on, they might be marking it in red as incorrect vocabulary. So yes, the students should have in their mind what they're going to be evaluated on. And that can be very helpful to them also. All right. And the colors, yes, the colors make the class much more interactive. And students are not just sitting there listening to the teacher going, oh, when is this going to be done? Half looking at, but they actually have to be active. And this is why I say they have to have their translation, their colored pencils, and their grading card, themselves. Because if they're asking classmates at the same time, everyone is marking in red, everyone should have their own red pencil, right? Get a little pack of the Blancanieves, colored pencils, and you're ready to go. You're ready to go. That's all it is. So yes, I can definitely put more information up on Facebook, the different grading cards that I use, some of the different texts I use, and some more examples of how things are marked so that you can see. But I think it's really well worth the time of preparation is nothing at all compared to the time spent grading students' translations. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything else you'd like to ask? All right. All right.
No, actually, you have been very, very thorough.
Good.
Marsha.
Yes.
There's a question there.
Yeah, yeah.
La puedo hacer en español porque
Claro,
el
claro.
inglés no es tan...
Claro.
Si entendí bien, los estudiantes son los que marcan ellos mismos en color.
Sí.
El riesgo, por supuesto, que cualquier maestro puede ver y estudiante también, es que pasen al lado de cosas a veces importantes. ¿Cómo se maneja este aspecto en particular? Que
Cosas importantes como
que olviden subrayar, que vean unas cosas o que no vean lo que debieron haber visto, que les falte, digamos, el peritaje para hacer o para ver algunas cosas y que tal vez lleguen a fosilizarse o lleguen a pasar un elemento importante simplemente porque no lo pudieron ver. No sé si se presenta metodológicamente este problema.
Pues yo creo que eso de la fosilización, en cualquier método tenemos ese riesgo, que es un riesgo muy, muy grande. Lo tenemos en cualquier método de evaluación de las traducciones. Sin embargo, aquí creo que como estamos trabajando lo mismo al mismo tiempo, estamos diciendo de este color porque es problema de esto, de este color porque es problema del otro, yo siento que aquí hay menos riesgo a que les falte algo. Solo tenemos que ver que si todos estamos en lo mismo, todos estamos on task, ¿no? Y ya luego cuando me dan las traducciones, yo sí los reviso así muy rápidamente, muy por encima. Ya para eso vi qué es lo que tenían que haber marcado y como que voy directamente a las áreas más problemáticas, se puede decir, para asegurar. Siempre creo que hay riesgo de que se nos vaya algo, pero siento que con esto hay menos riesgo a que se nos escape algo que al rato sigan con lo mismo una y otra vez. Sí.
No, great, Marsha. I think, well,
All right.
everybody in the comments were obviously great presentation.
Right.
It looks like, well, there's, again, lots of thanks. And
All right.
really, this is a very good method. I haven't tried it, but I think I'm going to start doing it. At least to save
Much
time.
easier. Yeah.
Exactly. Much
Yeah,
easier.
yeah.
Definitely. So,
All right.
if there are any more questions, well, the forum's still available. We have a few more minutes.
Let me
if
just
anybody-
answer one here. It says en cuál página de Facebook, en la página del evento. Sí, los puedo poner en la página del evento. Yo estoy manejando esa página del evento, los puedo poner ahí. Si alguno de los demás ponentes tienen algo que quisieran subir para complementar el evento o algo, por favor, háganmelo llegar, marshaway@hotmail.com o al correo del evento también, sanjeronimobuap@gmail.com. A cualquier de sus correos me la pueden mandar y le podemos subir a la página para que todos lo tengan, que tengan esa información. Y también vamos a ver si podemos hacer otros eventos, otras cosas para complementar el evento y ponerlos también en Facebook. A lo mejor hubo mucha pregunta aquí que no pudimos contestar en el tiempo limitado que tenemos. Vamos a pedir a lo mejor al ponente que nos pueda hacer una pequeña entrevista en base a esas preguntas y subirlo para que así tengamos mucha información como complemento aquí, pero sí ahí en la página de Facebook del evento, por favor. Ok. Y si no hay más preguntas, mejor tomamos un descansito de creo que 3 minutitos. No, 11:45. Tenemos como 5 minutos. Creo que es hora de que hagamos viaje al baño, a la cocina por el café. Y a las 11:45, entonces regresaremos. No tienen que salir del salón, dejamos el salón abierto, la sala abierta. Nada más si quieren descansar unos minutitos, ir a hacer algo. Y en unos minutos, entonces, 11:45, seguimos con la siguiente.
Well, thank you, Marsha. And really, you need a big applause.
A ustedes. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Hi. Okay. No hay, apenas ahorita 5 minutos. Es todo bien.